We cannot train our way out of this situation. Training alone is not going to do it unless there's funding that requires the people who need the training to systemically involve it into their practice.
And I think it has to be training with stories because stories make it real. They put the rubber on the road. Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD. And this is an extra special episode because we're going to be talking about the FASD Respect Act now that it has been signed into law, signed by President Trump very recently as of the time of this recording. And there's no better people to bring on to the podcast and talk about what it means for everybody and what steps we can take to help carry the ball further down the field than FASD United's very own Susan Shepard Carlson and Jen Wisdahl. Welcome, ladies, to Living with FASD.
Thank you. It's just a delight. And it's a delight, especially now after all the time that we've been working on the FASD Respect Act. We're just thrilled.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah. I was crushed when we missed passing it by one vote. It was just crushed. I remember just falling apart after that and Jen picking me up saying, it's okay, we'll get there.
This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think anymore, I think it's turned from a marathon into a relay race because maybe a never ending one, but that's okay because the FASD community is worth that effort and deserves that effort. So I think I remember also that day and just how crushed. I think we had a national group therapy session on Zoom talking about it because what had happened is we had pulled a last minute maneuver to try and get the bill put through on a special kind of rule that we had learned about, and our champions were really pushing for that. And yeah, we missed it by one vote, and it was just before Christmas, this time of year, and and what a relief to look at it now, same time of year, and know that.
And this is what, 2 years later? Because it's one complete legislative cycle.
Oh, gosh, time flies when you're having fun, hey?
Yeah, that was the end of the last Congress, and we're in the first year of this Congress.
And so it's only
I have to say one thing that we've learned, I think, is that you never can predict what's going to happen in Congress, especially these years. And to get a bipartisan bill passed through this Congress is phenomenal. And we ought to be very, very proud of what we've done.
I want to add to that too, Susan, that, I was thinking about that today in preparation for your podcast, Patti, that this work didn't happen because we did such a great job this year advocating. This happened because we've been doing such a great job advocating. And this bill, obviously our congressional champions, Senators Murkowski and Klobuchar, they've been huge supporters. Representatives McCollum and Bacon, again, immensely helpful. There have been other folks that have been really, really helpful along the way. But this didn't happen because of one party or another party. This happened because we, the people. This happened because people from all different walks of life, all different political affiliations, all different belief systems, places in the country got together and said, hey, we need change. And not only were we willing to say that, we were willing to show up and demand it. We did thousands, I'm not joking, thousands of meetings with our legislators over the last 5 years so that we are now considered a viable political force. People listen to us now. And, there was a quote that I've been kind of monitoring the social media with the team and everything. And I know Chris Melfi talked about this we have a monthly policy forum the last Wednesday of each month that anybody's welcome to join to hear about what we're doing in federal policy and if there's state policy things going on, they can check in, catch up, get the latest information. But there was a quote
that
about.
means I just missed another one last week.
Well, and actually we rescheduled it because of Thanksgiving, so it was this week, but that's okay. We taped them. They're on our YouTube channel. So it's riveting. So, you know, you don't want to watch it in 2 times the speed, but this quote was about an adult with FASD feeling seen and that this is their time. And I agree. I mean, what a great thing to feel and hear that you're seen and that our federal government, with all the noise that's going on this year, FASD, people with FASD were seen, were heard, and were responded to. And again, such huge thanks, obviously, to our congressional champions, but even more so to the people with FASD that took time on their lunch breaks to show up on Zoom meetings with their legislators, to the parents that were taking calls from their cars in the lineup to pick up their kids. We've had everything from flash mobs joining Zoom calls with legislators to tears or kids with FASD coming on and talking about why it's important to them. Like this really was the labor of a community, a movement. We've had organizations that have helped out, that have dedicated time to taking part in some of those thousands of calls. You know, some of our affiliates have really been heavily invested and involved in pushing this forward. Their staff donating tons of time to do it. And it's just been, again, the work of many. And it really, you know, as a mom to 3 young adults with FASD, makes me feel like, hey, these precious resources, that these precious people that I love and care deeply about are in good hands with this community, because this community is coming together in a way that I've never seen happen before. And it's exciting.
Well, and I want to add to that, Jen. I've been around the political system for decades. And I actually worked in the Minnesota legislature in information. So I've witnessed a lot of what happens in legislative bodies. And I believe this is the only way this could have happened. And it could not have happened without Zoom and COVID, which I think is remarkable. I remember because I started working on this before Jen. I would meet with member staff, and that was how you lobbied. You either maybe could do some phone conferences or you had to go to DC. And we could not have done what we did with that change in how you communicate with legislators. And it was so impactful. And I cannot underscore how much what did around this country to make that happen. This field, we've always said, we've got to get a celebrity or we got to do this, but it's all of us. And that's, you know, the professionals, it's everybody telling their members of Congress. It's the authenticity. It really, and I personally for myself, you know, I got involved in this through my work in juvenile court, but I'll have to say, when we did our task force around the state of Minnesota, we had 9 public hearings. And those 9 public hearings, when I heard stories from people with lived experience and families, it was dramatic, and it sticks with you. And that's what stuck with me and why I've stayed in this almost 30 years. And that's what happened during these last several years with members of Congress and their staff.
Yeah, I remember interviewing a Key Warner for the program at one point. She has the summer camps for families. And she was telling me the story about being at one of the Canadian conferences, probably the one that the Seattle conference has stemmed from. But someone coming up to her table at some point and saying, you know, we've known the facts about FASD for decades. It's the stories that change hearts and change lives. And so indeed, I think Zoom has been a very powerful force that has helped any number of agencies and programs have the success that we just had by bringing the stories to Washington through the internet.
I also, and maybe Jen knows this very well, was we had to provide the right message and the message of hope that this bill could provide, and not just go in and tell our, you know, all of our woes and, you know, what can you do about it? You have to provide that message, what your story, what this bill will do to help your story.
So where are we? I mean, President Trump signed off on a bill called the Support Act that includes the language from the FASD Act. But for my broader audience who has not been attending the monthly forum meetings, what does this mean? What's the impact of what just happened?
I'm just shocked that people aren't hanging on our every word all the time. Oh, we're probably entertaining, but I want to loop back and touch on something really quick and then definitely answer that question. I think there is a big piece of this, though, and this win that underscores the need for hope, positivity, and the voice of people with FASD in sharing their stories of them living in community with appropriate support and recognition. That's what tells the tale, and that's what gets people invested and involved. For so long before I started this, it was, let's tell the hardest story possible because that will convince people to help us. Let's tell the worst version of the story possible because people just don't understand how hard this is. That doesn't help anybody. If anything, that creates stigma and it doesn't invite people in. People want to be part of a winning team. And so in telling, being authentic and saying, yeah, there are some things that are really challenging, but here's what we could do about it. That's what gets people involved and engaged. Mm-hmm. But looping back to, okay, the bill passed. What does it do? And where do we go from here? So Susan is what we call a policy wonk. She loves policy. I am more of kind of a marketing person, if that makes sense. So we tag team on this. In essence, what the bill does and the language does is it authorizes the federal government to use money that is earmarked for FASD to start building state and tribal systems of care. So looking at what programs are receiving federal funding in the state and what programs exist in the state that are state funded, and how can those programs be changed to start addressing FASD, to start inviting people with FASD in, to start supporting FASD.
Giving us a seat at the table.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where the marketing comes in, right?
Yeah. I have some metal chairs, but none of them are red. Maybe I should get some spray paint and change.
I can ship one to you, Patti. If you really want a metal folding chair that's red, I happen to have a few of them.
I'll just get spray paint.
They've been well deployed as props, but I think, where we go next with this, and this is where, you ever watch Schoolhouse Rock? It kind of lied to us a little bit. Sorry, I'm showing, my Gen X is showing, but.
No, the Schoolhouse Rock is older than that, I'll have you know.
Fair enough.
Because I watched that in the 60s.
All right. They lied to us a little bit with the I'm just a bill and the bill passes and it goes through these steps. It's a long and winding road, my friends. It is not a point A to point B. We do this and then this happens. But what this bill is, it's an authorization bill. So it authorizes the federal government to spend money on FASD, and it tells the federal government how they have to spend the money, right? And so that's on the building FASD state and tribal systems of care. So it's looking more at supporting people with FASD. There's still a prevention element in there because clearly people need to know the impacts of alcohol on pregnancy, right? And it's not solely focused on FASD. That's easy. We'll just prevent it. Doesn't work that way, right? So it recognizes that. It modernizes the language around FASD. And so then this bill authorizes that, right? Now, this bill's little friend. So, here's the Respect Act, right? Its friend over here is appropriations. And look at that. It's recognizing my hand signals. I'm going to lower my hand. Its friend, appropriations, is Congress saying, yes, and we're going to spend this much money to do that. So when we got the bill passed, the bill was passed showing we had, as a country, we were spending $12.5 million on this. Now that seems like a lot of money, right? If I had $12.5 million,
well, that's not very much.
I'd still be doing this work.
Yeah.
Well, not when you
yacht somewhere. I don't know.
Well, when you look at the federal budget and the amount of money that goes to a lot of other programs,
it's a drop in the bucket.
But it's a start.
Yeah.
It's a start. And this is where what we do next. So there are a couple of things we got to do next. Number one, we have to get involved in our states. We still want to be quarterly at least. So once every 3 months, reaching out to our federal representatives and just, hey, FASD is still here. We're not going away. I want to update you on what's going on, keep you involved, right? We need them.
I wonder what would happen if I reached out to North Dakota's peeps and said, hey, come for my Wade for Awareness in September. Let me see my state reps in bathing suits.
But you know what? It's a great idea. Invite them into a seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
So then the other piece to this is, how our friend, the FASD Respect Act, has a buddy, appropriations, right? Now our job as advocates is every single year as they're preparing the budget, and that usually happens January, February-ish, right? We need to be going to our legislators and saying, fund FASD, fund FASD. We need additional appropriations to meet the congressional intent of our friend, the FASD Respect Act. They're saying we need to do this, 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 and this, right? Well, show me the money, right? Fund FASD. So this is where we can remain, and we need to remain politically active, because our friend, the FASD Respect Act, guess what? In 5 years, it expired because authorizations expire, right? And what we were doing with the Respect Act was actually reauthorizing authorization language and modernizing it, obviously, that had gone in back in the 90s, right? And it had expired in the early 2000s and early 2000s. Now, I am personally not willing to have that bill expire and then have to wait another 20 years, right? Why it's almost more important now to remain politically active and checking in with your reps. Your 2 senators and 1 rep, not getting rid of the TikTok dance. Sorry. 2 senators, 1 rep on a federal level, making contact with them regularly and reminding them that this is important, because in 5 years, if we were to not talk to them at all and then go back and say, oh, we'd like to reauthorize the FASD Respect Act, please, they'd say, okay, yeah, you and what army, right? And if we're going back annually and asking for more funding, fund FASD, then we're staying in contact with them. So that way, when it comes time to reauthorize, not only do we have more money going towards FASD to accomplish the goals we've set out in the FASD Respect Act, but getting it reauthorized is going to be that much easier. Yeah. So this is terribly important. So that's step 1, right? That's one thing we need to do.
Well, let me ask a quick question. If the last couple times that you came on the show and we were talking about writing letters, making phone calls, doing Zoom meetings, your website, fasdunited.org, had sample letters that people could copy, paste into their own email, or adapt if they so chose, that kind of thing. Are you going to be doing that again? Each of the next 5 years, saying this is what we want to, this is why we're asking for more money.
Absolutely. Those materials are almost completely done. We are, we've got some of them posted now. One of the things we do have, and I got to credit Chris Melfi in our office. When we started this, I was handling policy. Now I have Chris Melfi, who handles policy for FASD United, and Susan and I still get to play together in the policy space, which I love because this is very near and dear to my heart. And he has a year-long advocacy calendar that lays out all the steps of what we need to do as a community over the course of the year to be able to make this happen. And part of that is connecting with your states. So who are your state legislators? Because we also got to get the states interested and involved in making these changes that are going to be funded through the Respect Act. So it's a 2-pronged approach, right? We're getting both of them to meet in the middle. So
yeah, and I just want to add to that, Jen, the state part is going to be critical. And there's actually, when we put language in the bill that requires the Secretary of HHS to report back to Congress about these programs. So the more that we interrelate with state, and it's suggested they're supposed to get an advisory committee and look at this really strategically and thoughtfully, because there are millions and millions of dollars that go to the states in various categories that could be utilized. But there's going to be some gaps. We know there's going to be some gaps. And that's where states are going to report back, or they're going to, when they apply for, these grants from the federal government, they're going to say, well, we don't have enough diagnostic capacity. We need more money for whatever. So that if the community just doesn't connect with their state legislators and their governor and those to let them know the same stories that they told to their members of Congress, they're gonna miss out. And so we want all. I know it sounds like a big lift, but it's all it is doing the same kind of thing on the state level.
And it's one bite at a time. It's one phone call at a time. If you were to put on your calendar once a month, I contact somebody in my state. Once every 3 months, I contact somebody at a federal level and just remind them that, hey, this is important and we need help, we need support, and we're not going away, we're coming back. Those are manageable chunks, right? And those are the most necessary things right now, too, is just staying in front of it. And so even if you haven't been advocating from the very beginning, that's okay. Join the table. You can sit with us. Like, come on over. We'll teach you how to do it. That's part of these monthly policy calls, too, is giving people the language to be able to do that. We also, every Wednesday, when we don't have a policy forum, we have a policy drop-in. So if you have questions, if you're brand new to this, if you've never even touched it, you can just drop in, show up, and ask your questions. And FASD United staff, usually Susan and I will be there to answer questions and just get people going, because so much of this is, it's neurobehavioral, right? We're meeting people where they're at, and we can get this done if we meet people where they're at and stay in front of Congress, stay in front of our states, so that this is seen as really, vital. Because we did something remarkable here. And I would hate to see us go through all this work to have just one thing happen from it.
Yeah.
I think we can build on this, and I'd love to see us do it.
Well, and Jen and Pat, it's going to be a lot easier for advocates to now go to their states, because this is a big deal. The federal government has said this is an important issue, and we're telling the states that you need to build capacity and do it in a thoughtful way, that we're just not going to throw money at you without going through that process. And that was kind of what we sold, to the conservatives. This is a fiscally conservative approach to do it in a systemic way, rather than just, we're going to, continue to do our training and educating parents. One of the things that has kept me in the stories that I heard, and all of these years from parents and professionals, the systems do not understand this disability. When I say systems, I mean the education system, the medical profession. All of these systems of care do not understand, and therefore the parents are having to do that education. And that's not fair. That's not just. That is why we need to change this systemically for good.
And there are, like you said, many systems that need the education. Having moved to North Dakota, just in fact, this coming Sunday from the time we're recording this will be 1 year. I have a case of my book, Sip by Sip, sitting in my closet. And every time I go see a new doctor, I give them a copy of the book. And so that they can, hopefully they read it and find out those stories of adults living with FASD, most of whom, like me, discovered that prenatal alcohol exposure was part of their story too, only as adults. And so I think what I will be doing, I know Carl Young, who's a fantastic advocate here in North Dakota.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I'm going to ask him if I send him several books, enough for all of the state HHS peeps to get one, if he will distribute them for me. Because this time of year, I'm not driving across North Dakota.
No, I just...
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, yesterday I flew into Minnesota and I drove from St. Cloud down to the cities, and it had just snowed. And so I understand
Yeah.
Very much.
Especially if you're used to Florida.
Oh, yes. I can still do it though.
Like riding a
Oh,
bike, we don't forget.
we don't forget.
But we do get rusty at it. Hopefully, Carl will humor me with that.
Carl is amazing. And I did want to point out, and you'd mentioned this about the conference that was up in Vancouver and ended up moving into Seattle. If I can, that conference is coming up again, April 18th through the 20th in Seattle.
Submitted my abstract last night.
We have we had 90 abstracts submitted last night, Patti, which is wonderful and they're all like high quality, really great abstracts that are really showcasing FASD, particularly in the context of adolescents and adults with FASD. And so this is, you talked about giving your book to clinicians and to lawmakers. This conference is something that would be appropriate also to invite clinicians, lawmakers, and at the same time gives the opportunity for families and most importantly, people with FASD to get together and know they're not alone. Again, I talked about how this was done by community. I cannot overstress the importance of community in this space because this can feel very lonely. When you're going through medical issues that maybe you don't understand because it's not common and you realize, oh my gosh, it's because I was prenatally exposed to alcohol. Maybe that has something to do with it, right? That feels really alone. But knowing that there's other people out there that are experiencing the same thing, other families out there that might be experiencing the same thing.
Well, isn't that what led to the ALC survey? Was conversations like that.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I think it's that community piece too. So we really encourage folks to, show up there, turn out there, because it's a great opportunity to interact with clinicians and researchers. And that's where they can take away a piece of, Susan was talking about the listening sessions she did back in Minnesota. That's a great way for clinicians and scientists and researchers and policymakers to get direct information from people with FASD, their families, their community supports, and take that back with them to inform their work. The other thing I did want to highlight too is that in September, I believe it's the 27th through the 30th, is National FASD Impact Week. And that is a free conference in Washington, D.C. And part of it is we train you, we support you in going up to the Hill and talking to your legislators and having those face-to-face visits. Because as much as Susan is 100% spot on, Zoom was a game changer. Yeah. And we have utilized the heck out of it and we will continue to do so because that is the path forward. Those in-person visits really make a difference.
They mean a lot because it shows the lawmakers that, especially from faraway states, that there's that much to people to travel.
Absolutely. And, imagine you're a senator from Hawaii and somebody from Hawaii shows up in an FASD shirt with 5 other people walking into your office talking about how FASD impacts Hawaiians and the people in Hawaii. And, that's powerful. Walking on the Hill and having a couple hundred people with FASD shirts on, it's pretty cool. Got to be honest. So I think there's a couple opportunities outside of the regular calls and visits that we all as Americans should be making to our legislators because we have a right to use our voice.
And it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
So the call to action for the audience is to be checking the website to see Chris's schedule about things to do every month. And making those 3 phone calls once a month to to the federal senators and representative, and then also to the state rep and senator, HHS people.
The other thing I would really encourage is there are lots of opportunities in the disability community to get involved. Their states have all kinds of advisory committees and boards. And sometimes I think that we as a community wait for it to say FASD because then we feel like we belong, right? I want to challenge us as a community to say, we belong no matter whether it says FASD or not. We are part of that community. whether they recognize it or not. So I encourage us to take our seat at the table. We're not going to wait to be invited. We're going to come in and take it in a polite, wonderful, developing, loving way.
Known to invite myself to sit down at a table.
Exactly. So let's use that positive assertiveness for good and get involved. Do you have an FASD United affiliate in your area that you could be connecting with one of their work groups? Could you connect with a state work group? All of these things are going to build community. You're going to make friends. You're going to meet people that enhance your life, and you're going to help move things forward. If there's a state board, if there's a county board, this is how movements are made. This is how change is made, by getting involved. And I mean, I get it. When I was a young mom raising 3 kids with FASD and various forms of trauma, and my house was chaos. I was not very good at understanding how to support my kids in a neurobehavioral way, and I'm better. I won't say I'm still great at it. I'm getting there. I'm learning. But, even then, I recognize that had I had the opportunity and had I given myself the opportunity to get involved, what that would have done for me in creating community, because it can feel a little lonely. Right? This can feel like a very lonely path. And so,
Especially if families isolate your family because of problem behaviors.
which
It
you mean
is-
direct manifestations of the disability, right?
Yeah, it can be isolating. So this emphasis on community is tremendously important.
It really is. I mean, I think about, the FASD conference a couple of years ago. I had a mom come up to the registration table, because I always work the registration table at the conference. That way I get to say hi to everybody, because I'm that human. Um, and she came up and she took one look at the table and she started crying. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Well, this is the first time I've been in a space with other families like mine." How powerful is that? And boy, it would be great to not have to wait for that.
Well, I think, Jen, to be in all settings where there's that understanding about the disabilities. So you don't feel like you're just this class of people that, that understands each other, but the rest of the world doesn't. And that's, our hope and dream, we got to tell the story about the Respect Act. I think everybody needs to know this story. We got into this. The Respect Act had a long title, and I should have. And Jen can maybe.
It was, what was it? Preventing. Advancing prevention research, education, and something for fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. So it was like this, mile-long title. And I looked at that and I'm like, where's the support?
Well, and then she said, "Can we change the order of the words?" And I thought, well, yeah, why not? But I didn't understand where she was going with that. And she said, if we change the order of the words, we can come up with the acronym RESPECT. My God. Brilliant. Just brilliant.
Diverse to see that.
And now all you have to do is say Respect Act, even though you don't even have to put FASD with it, although there might be other Respect Acts out there. And people know what it is and they understand what it means. And that's what's so important, is that understanding and respect of a neurodiverse person that's been prenatally exposed to alcohol.
Now, one thing that I was hoping that the Respect Act would do would be to codify I don't know if that's the right word, on a national level, that FASD is indeed a disability.
Okay, let me tell you, I tried to get a definition in there that it was a developmental disability, and didn't make the cutting board. But this Respect Act lays the foundation to be able to go back and do that. There's no way the Congress not now say, no, you're not a developmental disability. And so that's the next step.
So
that has to happen.
working as a foster and adoptive social worker in California, California has regional centers, which is their title for developmental disability agencies. And when it comes to FASD, all the mental health clinics would say, oh, it's developmental, go that way over to the regional centers. But over there, they would say, oh, it's behavioral, go over there to mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
you're right on.
Don't care who has primary responsibility. I want to give everybody better tools.
Yeah.
But nobody opened their doors to me.
So this loops back though to the point we were making about being active in your state, because so many of those decisions about eligibility for supports, eligibility for IEPs, things like that, we are a country of 50 separate countries.
Yes.
When it comes to that kind of legislation. And that's why it's so critical we're involved in the states and we're working on the federal policy. And I think that that's why the call to action is that two-pronged, because we can serve up part of it, but unless the states are ready to accept it and are willing to codify it on their end, there goes my hand again.
I don't know, does mine do that?
I talk with my hands a lot, apparently. Unless we do that, we're going to miss out. And so I think it's important to look at both of those pieces.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It has to happen. I mean, it really does.
Because education doesn't want to provide services without, it's a disability. And yet we can point to the stats saying prenatal alcohol exposure is the leading cause of developmental disabilities in the Western world. Nobody argues that, but the recognition is somehow at the same time missing. So
yeah, FASD is an and conversation. I mean, I think that's the key right there. It's FASD and, when you're talking about, you say go this way for mental health and you go this way for developmental, we are an and conversation as a disability. And so this is where, with the Respect Act and the work that we need to do in the states, it's letting them know that this is an and proposition. It's not an or, it's an and.
This is a medical diagnosis and a mental health diagnosis and a developmental diagnosis and a neurological one.
All of you.
Yeah.
Things, because I've been in this for so long, and I always believed that it was a significant problem. But we really didn't know that for sure until the JAMA article came out in 2018. And I was just thrilled to have that data that did, the conservative number of 1 out of 20. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so easy to go to Congress and sell this. Was I naive or what? But that I thought was a change maker, getting that data. And if we hadn't had that, it would have been I think it would have been a harder sell, obviously. But because we were able to use that, and that was an National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism research study that actually went and did longitudinal and going at first graders around the country in 4 areas. So it was I would say a monumental change in the field to have that data. I think we covered a lot of ground.
I did want to mention too, though, that we do have, you mentioned the education on the education front, because that's the first thing I get asked when we're talking about policies. When are you going to fix IDEA and get recognition in schools? And I can tell you that is a huge issue. As a mom, IEP season, I have, 1 kid left in school and IEPs. Am I right? Anyway.
Going throughout the country. Yes.
Am I right? You'd think doing what I do for a living would make them a little bit easier. It does not. At any rate.
Part of that, Jen, is that it doesn't matter what you do professionally as the parent. When you walk into that school, they're not interacting with your profession. They're interacting with just a parent, which means you know nothing.
It's true. I really know nothing.
You can be just.
And I've met some fabulous teachers along the way and some amazing administrators and special education advisors. And, so I can't say that I've had, a horribly, there are people who have it much, much worse than me. So I'm not complaining, but I will say too, we currently have the third version now of the National FASD in Education Survey app. So if you are an educator or you know an educator, please encourage them to take it. If you have kids with FASD, please take it. If you are a person with FASD and you don't have so much trauma around your educational experience that you are willing to take it, please take it, because that data that we collect from that helps us make the case for additional legislation. Now, IDEA and how it's interpreted is on a state by state basis. So that's one of those where we're going to have to bite each state and work on each state to get that going. And at the same time, work on federal policy. That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a big fight. And
but it's going to be easier. But
it's going to be easier.
It's going to be easier.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how you can have the Respect Act and look at the idea, not have FAS as a condition under idea. I mean, I just don't know. And then but Jen's so right, getting that data, and we've got good data now, but we need to update that. Hopefully your watchers and listeners will help that out on them.
To me, that part of it goes back to education of professionals and getting school psychologists to become aware of a result of neurocognitive testing that says scattered data is the finding and it is indicative of FASD. Instead of being the excuse to say, oh, it's just behavior.
I think you're absolutely spot on there, Patti. And I think that until we have legislation that requires them to learn it, our educators are they are running all over the place. They are working, that is a hard job. And I would say most people in the education system are just in it to do right by the kids. With limited resources, with limited availability of time. So I think systemically looking at how we look at education, number one, and making sure we have a seat at the table in how education as a whole is talked about, how special education as a whole is talked about, and protecting special education. And then adding to that, really looking at involving FASD into IDEA so that there is some leverage, and we have some leverage to require that be looked at. I think that's going to be another piece of the puzzle, and the survey that we have going right now that will help with it.
And then it'll give educators the tool rather than having the parents always be the one that gives. They will already have had the tools necessary to make sure that IEP is appropriate.
And parents and teachers often see different versions of the child, because especially if you're talking about a student in the morning when there's a relatively full battery powering the day and enabling the student to wear the mask and to do fairly well. But by the end of the day, and especially by the time parent and child are both at home, there's nothing left in the tank.
We talk about after school restraint collapse. That is a thing. Poor kid, having to hold it together all day, how to, the flickering of the overhead lights, the noise, the sensory, not understanding. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. And so, that after school restraint collapse. So ways we can help with that, get involved. And training is a big piece of this, but I've said this for years. We cannot train our way out of this situation. Training alone is not going to do it unless there's funding that requires the people who need the training to systemically involve it into their practice.
And I think it has to be training with stories, right? Because stories make it real. They put the rubber on the road. I can't help but think back to conversations I've had with Deb Evenson, who worked for decades up in Alaska, both in the major cities and in the bush, when she was because her background is education, but interacting with, various teachers through the years who've said, I don't have time to learn how to interact with this particular child in such an individual way because I've got all these other kids. And her response consistently was, if you invest on meeting each of your students, all of your students in this manner, it will actually make your job easier and less exhausting.
I do want to put a plug in for the 8 Magic Keys that Deb inspired, and then I think they've done a newer version, which is also
Yes.
translated in Spanish through the Alaska Center for FASD. And some of that work, I think, was done through some support from Senator Murkowski. Again, this is where the training and the practical and the things that we as an FASD community really flock to and love to do, the training, the support, that where the heart is, the advocacy, the political advocacy side absolutely supports that. And you are not going to get as far with the heart side of the training and the stories unless you also have the head side of getting those systems involved in making change. So we can't train our way out of this. We can't legislate our way out of this. We need to work together with both of them to do that. And I think that's what we have in the FASD Respect Act.
I would say it's seismic, John. Yeah. After
need a
50
rumble.
years. After 50 years.
So
I think
as an agency, you guys are going to continue working hard, advocating for all of us in Washington, D.C. year after year after year on the appropriations side of things. What else are you looking to tackle?
Well, we just talked about education and idea. I mean, and looking at those eligibility, and there is a definition of an idea on disabilities, which should be amended to include fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. So that is we're starting that process now.
I think too, grants don't fund policy work. So if you think about how this work is done, you need to have an agency that's coordinating it, that's putting things together. And that work has only happened because of the generosity of donors. We don't get money from the federal government to lobby the federal government for more money. It doesn't work that way.
Shoot, I wish
it did. That would be awesome. Exactly. So I am going to put a shameless plug in that if this work is important to you, if this work means something to you and your family, if this work is the direction that you want your national organization, because we are your national organization. We belong to you, and the work we do is for you and with you. If that means something, I'm going to ask you to give. And I know times are tight. I know that things aren't roses and sunshine in everybody's wallets right now. And, if you can give $10 a month, awesome. That funds a call with a congressman. These have tangible results.
Just think if you had 1,000 advocates doing $10 a month. I don't know. I'm not a math person, but
the policy stuff we could do with $10,000. And that's the other piece, just in terms of being good stewards, we have, I believe at last count, it was 86 cents out of every dollar goes directly to the work we do, not overhead. And that's unheard of. Yeah. So we are trying to be good stewards of that. So I don't want to make this all.
I say that's higher than most.
It is. And we're really conscientious of that because, this is personal to us. We have people with FASD on our staff. Our Family Navigator program is staffed by parents and caregivers of people with FASD and people with FASD. I have 2 siblings of people with FASD on staff. This is wildly personal to us. We care about this. And I am excited for the things that we're going to do in the upcoming year. We're looking at things like micro trainings. It's great to have a big workshop to train clinicians. What clinician do you know that has more than 15 minutes of their time to give? How can we make things and meet people where they are? Our affiliate network is now up to 52 affiliates worldwide. So we've got an affiliate in Scotland, an affiliate in Mexico now. Super exciting. We're getting our materials translated over into Spanish, which is really helpful for the U.S. because we have a huge Spanish-speaking population in the U.S. So having those materials available, and like I said, we've got the conference coming up in 26. We've got Impact Week coming up in 26, which is going to be huge. And at Impact Week, one of the things
that's one of your primary fundraisers, is it not?
Well, we have the gala. the Red Shoes Gala at Impact Week. But Impact Week is free. It's a free conference. And during that conference, what we do is we do a Hill Day. We also do the National FASD Symposium. And that's where we look at there's a call to action written on like what needs to be done in the US for FASD. What are the things we like that have to happen in the US so that FASD is recognized, that people are supported, prevention efforts aren't stigmatizing, that sort of thing. And we sit everybody down in a room and we collectively, as a community, work on those recommendations. So if you're somebody who thinks, hey, FASD United, you should be doing this. Why aren't you doing that? That symposium is where we get our direction from. And that's a way you can contribute to how we, as your national organization, can be doing the things that all of you think we should be doing. And then we publish that in a white paper so everybody can see it. And that's what we follow in terms of policy. That's what we follow in terms of actions. That's something where even if you never gave us a dime, you can come to Impact Week. You can skip the gala if you don't want to give us any money. You can go.
It's a lot of fun, though.
It really is.
It's a lot.
It really is. It's worth going.
Party.
Exactly. You can still get involved, and that's a way for your voice to be heard. If this is important to you, that's another way you can do it. So thank you for asking that question, Patti. It was a really good.
And I do have
good questions once in a while.
Say we're really fortunate because we've got a couple of lobbyists that are on our board and have been doing this for a long time. And we don't have the funds to hire a DC lobbyist. And so you do need that expertise. I feel like now I could maybe be a DC lobbyist just by the experience I've learned. But we are really lucky as an organization to have that piece because you do need it.
Well, what are some of your biggest fundraisers each year that the audience can be thinking about participating in? Or should it just be like the monthly giveaway?
The monthly would be fabulous. I mean, I've always said that. I'm a monthly and I have been since I've been on since 2018.
There's something we can count on that's reliable, that's like we know that is coming. Although, things like I know, Patti, you're planning Move Fast, which those kind of events we have a saying at FASD United that one thing never does one thing. And this is going back to our 86%. We are never going to do one thing that only has one purpose. So if we look at our Move Fast event, for example, that's not just for the purpose of raising money. That is for the purpose of raising awareness. How can you invite other people to our table? So Move Fast is virtual 5Ks, run walks, gatherings, anything that you want to do that brings people together in your community in September for FASD Awareness Month can be a Move Fast event. And we love it if there's some donations that come through to us through that event. And we've had organizations that have run Move Fast events where the money goes to that FASD organization. And that's okay. We're okay with that. We succeed when everyone succeeds, and it also raises awareness.
And I know in past years you have invited corporate sponsors to participate with Move Fast, what used to be Run Fast, which is a terrific pun.
Well, that's Rebecca Toulouse.
Yes,
right? He's amazing. Jason Toulouse. Yeah.
Yes.
I saw the other day her kid actually was on Facebook educating people on FASD. Like, look at how multi-generational this has got. So I need to give a shout out to the Toulouse family because they're amazing.
Corporate sponsorship had been welcomed as part of Move Fast. Are you looking for corporate sponsorship throughout the year? Is that something that people can keep in mind as they interact? Like, for instance, if they were to present at the Rotary Club or something, they could present, hey, remember this organization in your giving, things like that.
Rotaries are fabulous. I've done a lot of presentations. That's their mission, and they're in the community. The more I would highly encourage going and speaking at Rotary. I'm a Rotary member. I love the Rotary. Oh, and I think we need to do more of that. Put that on our list.
I know I've gone and spoken at the DC Rotary, and they're a fabulous organization and are really aligned to be able to help us. And I would also look at things like we need corporate sponsors for the FASD conference in Seattle. You know, that's a break even. We don't make money on that. That is not a fundraiser. I can tell you quite honestly,
No,
it is
it
not a
costs money.
fundraiser. It costs money to put that on, and corporate sponsors are incredibly helpful there. You know, same thing with Impact Week. You know, that is a free conference, and that takes funding because there's a policy element to it. That part of it takes uh, takes funding. We use corporate sponsors for our gala. You know, if somebody wants to sponsor the mocktails for this year, for the Red Shoes Gala, I would love that. That would be fabulous. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that corporate sponsors, families, individuals, if you want to run your own FASD fundraiser for FASD United, we can set you up with your own personal web page to raise money, and you can go out and do that. Just get a hold of us. We want to work with you on that because we are your organization.
Anything else that my audience should be aware of or think about doing?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's such a heart of gratitude for this community, for your audience, for the FASD community. We can't do what we do, and we love what we do without the community. And none of this would have been possible without the community. We need you. So thank you. That is the overwhelming, overarching sentiment. Thank you from the bottom of the heart, my heart, from the organization, from my family. Thank you. You all have made a difference for the organization, for the country, for the community, and for my family. And I am just overwhelmingly grateful. I'm going to cry, man. It's powerful, though.
It is, you know, and I was thinking we're going to be doing a press conference, Senator Klobuchar, and I started thinking about what I wanted to say. And all of a sudden I just started to cry. And I thought, Susan, how are you going to be able to do this? But I am just like Jen, so thankful for everyone that has participated over these years because they have made a big, huge.
It must have been so surreal when, not only when the bill passed both chambers, but when President Trump signed it.
I would say the biggest deal, though, was when I got a text from Senator Murkowski's staff and said that we had no idea that this was going to happen. Sometimes we kind of have some heads up that the Senate had passed this unanimously.
Oh my!
And she said, "This is a big deal." I called Jen, tell her. And I thought she was having a heart attack. I had text back. I said, "You mean that the Senate passed this unanimously? It's going to go to the president?" And she said yes. So this is a big deal. And again, thank you. I've got to go do some caroling and into the Minnesota snow at least. And
let me ask one super quick question, if I may. For people who are going to be having events, you know, whether it's not until September's MoveFast or whether it's anything prior to that, are there educational flyers that they can download from the website and get printers to donate their printing for the events? Things like that?
We absolutely have those available for events, usually a little closer to the events. We'll have those, and we will for new for 2026. We will have a sponsorship prospectus. I know we have one on the website right now for 2025. So we'll have those materials available. And when in doubt, call our office. We have a real person that answers the phone, like an actual person that picks up. And hi, her name's Terry. She's lovely.
It used to be Chris.
It used to be Chris, but Chris is busy doing policy. So, we're growing. And so, call Terry and just say, here's what I need. And Terry's lovely. She will help you out and direct you to whoever in the organization that is going to be able to get you what you need. And if there's things that we don't have and you do need them, we'd love to help with that. Just let us know.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, for your time this morning. And I wish you merry, merry, happy holidays coming up.
I just want to thank you, Patti, I want to thank you for what you do and also wish you, happy holidays. and a very happy new year.
It's been one of the greatest joys and honors of my career, really, to be doing this. Yeah, if I could only figure out a way to monetize it.
That's me too. I've been doing
like,
this for
right?
almost 30. Well, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I haven't gotten anything monetary. But it's
Right?
just
We just like
having the
writing
bill.
books. People think authors get rich. No, we don't.
Well, thank you for donating your book. You've been so generous with your book, donating
you'll-
it to the Red Shoes Gala for our.
You'll be getting more this year.
I appreciate it. Yeah, some amazing stories, and
And
really
this
the
second
stories matter.
edition is so much better than the original.
Well, now you have to do the Great American Novel, and then you'll make. I keep telling our daughter that that's what she needs to do so she can take care of me in my old age.
Well, if we're talking novels, then Jodi Culp is the author.
True.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, ladies, thank you for your
Well,
time. Blessings
thank you.
upon both and upon FASD United.
Thank you so much.
I hope you found today's candid conversation to be enjoyable, hopefully humorous. Definitely, I hope you found it valuable in terms of adding to the depth and breadth of your knowledge about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. It is my honor and great pleasure to bring more perspectives and more information to you week by week. I want to thank you for being a valuable part of this podcast family. And please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you follow me on so that more people can discover the show and learn more about FASD in the process. If you want to reach out to today's guest, please check the show notes for their contact information, any links that they provided for me to share with you. Also, there will be links for the things that I have to offer. For instance, any professional development training or community organization training that you might be interested in ranging for, or coaching services for yourself as a neurodivergent adult or as a parent of a little, please check out my website at patriciacasper.com. And if you want to pick up a copy of my book, Sip by Sip, Candid Conversations with Adults Living with FASD, you can do so at books.by/yourfasdcoach or on Amazon. Okay, that is a wrap. I want to thank you again for showing up week after week. I hope you really enjoyed today's candid conversation, and we'll see you next time. Take care.